Doug, pleasure to have you here at the Open Storage Summit. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
I want to talk about just open storage as an industry. As you're coming from the networking world, what do you see from your customers and from the market in terms of open storage and the need for it?
In storage in general, I think is going through a tremendous phase of disruption. As companies that traditionally made enterprise class products at enterprise class cost structures to make enterprise class systems margins are coming under pressure from the open storage movement. And what we're seeing is that, for example, in the cloud market, where especially public clouds, where it's run IT as a business, and every decision you make influences the profitability of your business that you're running. I've never seen a profitable public cloud built on enterprise class centralized storage systems. Why? Because it can't be done. A price point's been set in the market by Amazon with S3 and by Amazon with EC2. If you're significantly above that, even with enterprise class features, there's very few customers that are willing to pay for that. Those customers aren't big enough to be a market. And what we then find is the public cloud operators say, if I want to build something to Google's scale, at Facebook's velocity, at Amazon's price point, the only way to do it is to leverage open source wherever possible, whether that's OpenStack, whether that's open storage, and whether that's an open networking foundation. That becomes the path of least resistance to build a profitable service offering. And in the end, it's all about business.
Okay, great, awesome. You talk about public clouds, and if you look at the economics, there is definitely the OpEx and the CapEx. And I'm sure going down the route of open standards, no vendor lock-in, it's got a direct implication of both of those when you're trying to build profitable public clouds. What's your take on it in terms of how any service provider should approach public cloud from that factor?
Well, a service provider should just start with what business do you want to be in and what services are you going to offer and can I offer them profitably. Let's be really blunt. If you can't offer your service and make a profit, don't offer the service. Now, if you want to maximize profitability, you have to lower the capital asset acquisition cost while extending the life cycle of the capital asset over as long a period as possible. And we have to lower the operating costs such that the combined cost of money over time for the capital asset, the return on invested capital, plus the minus the OpEx cost. I can measure if am I going to make money or not. And we're seeing cost of let's just say very low cost per gigabyte delivered. And the question then becomes, wow, how am I going to be profitable if I can charge a few pennies per gigabyte? Well, I don't think you can do that if you're investing too heavily in big iron to accomplish it. And I would say that every market, from mobile handsets to mainframes, has been significantly transformed by the introduction of open source software and, frankly, just open from a commercial development perspective. Even proprietary systems that enabled third-party application development on top of them were significantly better and more well-adopted platforms than ones that remained completely closed. Yet if you look at the worlds of storage and the worlds of networking, what you'll find are some of the most closed ecosystems possible, and closed systems that don't enable third-party development, believe that the only way a customer should get a feature or capability is from that single vendor, and that single vendor should be extracting, let's just call them painful margins from the customers. If we value engineer at the beginning and lower the cost of hardware, if we leverage open source software where it makes sense, and then we open that open source software platform up to third-party ecosystem development in an open framework, now we have creative value being created, and we solve the problems we don't even know our customers had. And when we do that, you're creating value in a different way, but you're also able to achieve reasonable margins, meet your R&D requirement and support requirement that the customers demand and they need to continue to demand, while enabling them to run profitable businesses.
Great. So, if you talk to any service provider today, everyone wants to be the next Amazon, or they are aspiring to have the services what Amazon is offering
Certainly.
in the market today. What would you recommend to them to get started? Because to your point, they can't go down the path that they have known for the last 20 years. Legacy networking, legacy storage, legacy hardware is just not going to help them to achieve that. On one hand, Amazon, Google, Facebook, they have the power of the engineering talent in-house, where some of the cloud providers may not have it. So what would you recommend as maybe the initial first 2-3 steps for these vendors to get started on to build profitable cloud services?
Well, the first step should always be buy a lot of Arista switching gear. It's the answer to everything. But in all seriousness, buy even more Arista switching gear. No. If I was a service provider and I wanted to get started today, build a pilot, test your market, build your pilot based on the technologies that are the same types of ones that you aspire to be like use. For instance, if you look at the enterprise companies, the Microsofts, EMCs, Cisco's of the world, they designed for the enterprise customer base. You're a cloud provider. You're not an enterprise customer. What are the features you need? What are the capabilities you require to deliver the services that you want to sell? I bet in almost every instance you can find those from non-traditional vendors, but those non-traditional vendors are the ones who are supporting the service providers today, who are trying to build these competitive offerings, who are supporting the PTTs throughout Asia and Europe, who are supporting the major carriers in the United States. They're being supported for cloud deployments, in many cases, not with the traditional vendors, the enterprise vendors. They're using the same networking equipment, storage architectures, storage software platforms that the public cloud providers are using, that the new age of IT operators are using. And yeah, it takes a more intelligent, I don't say more intelligent, it takes an engineer, okay? And I say that very sincerely because a lot of people have become, in IT, vendor slaves. They'll do what Cisco tells them to do because Cisco told me to do it, it must be right, and I will implement it. My message to them is simple. Think for yourself. I'm not going to say our switch is the right one every time, but I will say take the time to know your options, like every good engineer should. Know the technologies that are available, stay current, and then evaluate them and make the most informed decision possible, and then test them to validate your assertions. And then build your pilot. Take your pilot to market, test it, break it, make mistakes. Don't be afraid to. Learn from those. Adjust, tune, and optimize, and then take time to volume. While you're doing that, start building your sales and marketing plan too, because technology without a go-to-market will sit there idling. And with our customers, we want to be there with them at the beginning to ensure they're building in a way that lets them be profitable and successful, but also ensure that they're able to grow and be able to invest into that growth. So while they have some competitive advantage because Amazon's not in their geography, they have a unique regulatory environment, they have better connectivity to certain customer bases, they can leverage that while they have it to capture their fair market share. And at that point, be operating profitably and reap the rewards of that.
Great. And I know Arista and Nexent has worked with a few large service providers around the world.
Several to start, many more to come.
Yeah. For someone looking at this as an option, what are some of the lessons learned from the deployments that we have done together on the field that you can point out to make sure that people don't repeat those mistakes again?
The first thing would be segmentation, right? Implement layer 3 segmentation where it makes sense so you don't start flooding MAC address tables. I think we all learned that one at VMworld this year, right? We had a lot of users constantly changing, a lot of VMs spinning up and spinning back down. We started running out of MAC address table space because when you spin up 5,000 VMs, the next minute you spin up another 5,000, you consume them quick. So layer 3 segmentation makes sense. And the great thing about the Nexenta open storage platform is it's layer 3 aware. It's not like fiber channel over Ethernet, where I'm bound to a subnet. It's a global file system for a reason. It's globally addressable. So leverage that capability and discretely segment things behind layer 3 routed boundaries that have no performance penalty and haven't for 14 years. So I think we're well past the layer 3 is slow, layer 2 is fast days. At least I hope we are. And that's the first lesson. The second is, look at the scale you're going to want to grow to and ensure that the architecture you're deploying can get you there without throwing away any investment. What I've seen happen too many times is some people will start with an overbuilt infrastructure and they'll never be profitable. Some people will start with too cheap of an infrastructure and the network infrastructure will break, the server infrastructure will break, the storage infrastructure will break, and they'll be able to support their customers well and they'll get tarnished. It's finding that right-sized infrastructure. And part of that right-sized infrastructure says, be able to make an investment, predict your growth slope, double it. Now draw it out 2 years. And show me how you're not wasting any money.
Doug, thanks for joining us at the Open Storage Summit. I know you have a breakout session in maybe another 10 minutes or so, and we're looking forward to that.
You guys are keeping me busy today. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Pleasure.
Thank you.